This boat was built to fly. We bought this boat to fly. But the fact of the matter is that you're going to spend a lot of time in full displacement mode just getting to and from. Because this is not your run-of-the-mill dinghy, it's got some, shall we say, peculiar personality traits that if you're not aware of, it can be a little challenging. In the worst case, it can be just downright frustrating. So I'm going to talk today a little bit about just getting around in displacement mode on your UFO. A viewer of one of my other videos asked me, so how do you get around in very, very light winds? And I'm happy to tell you that. Are you ready? Here it is. Don't. If you are out and it's light wind, you can get the boat to move. The secret is to get it as flat as possible, to get the sterns as much out of the water without bearing the bow, which means you're gonna have to probably shift your body weight closer to centerline and shift it forward. It doesn't really matter how you do it. I tend to kind of recline and lean forward just to give myself an opportunity to stretch up my legs, stretch up my back. And if you do that, you can expect to make a little bit of headway in a light breeze. Unlike a sunfish or a laser, do not expect to pump, rock, and scull your way to wherever you want to go. There is no sculling with this rudder. You can't pump the rudder and make headway. You have to have naturally generated water flow over the rudder for it to have any effect whatsoever. Let's talk about tacking. In displacement mode, 90% of the time, tacking will involve backing the boat down. Now, if you've ever heard of the term Heisman, what it's talking about is backing down on your knees, facing forward. Generally, when I use the term Heisman, it means backing down in any form, because you can do this on your butt, you can do it on your knees, you can do it standing up, and you can do this facing aft. So all the Heisman means is backing down, and the mechanics, no matter whether you do this facing forward, facing aft, on your knees, or standing up, whatever, the mechanics of this are exactly the same. The secret to backing down, there are two steps to it really. First, backwind the sail and simultaneously put the tiller in the same corner of the boat where the clue is. I've seen guys stay in irons 5-10 minutes because they haven't figured this thing out. Make that happen, and then you can move on to step two. Now, step two is a little bit of a timing thing, because if you just pop the mainsail back in to get a little bit of power and you throw the tiller to the other side of the boat, you're just gonna stop and you're still gonna be in irons. So you have to pump first and then let some flow develop over the rudder, and then squeeze the bow, drive the bow away from the wind to get it so it's perpendicular to the wind. Now, whether or not you need to keep moving after that or not, you just make sure the boat stays perpendicular to the wind while you sit back down, get your feet in the straps, have a drink of water, whatever it is you need to do to get resituated on the boat, to keep the boat perpendicular to the wind, so that when you are ready to go, all it takes is just a little sheet in, and then you're off. Now, sometimes you might come up on the other side of the mainsail during attack and realize that you've got a little bit of extra momentum, or you've got a little bit of flow still remaining going over the rudder foil. Also, if the battens had not yet popped, that's an indication you're still getting a little bit of lift around that corner. And if you're very careful, you can start pulsing the rudder to try to get the bow further and further away from the eye of the wind until you're in the heart of the sailing envelope, at which point you can just pop the mainsail and start sailing away without having to do the Heisman maneuver. This is not something that is predictable. It's not something that I really shoot for. It's just something to be aware of, so that when it presents itself, you can take advantage of it. Tacking versus gybing. So I would, in light winds, just avoid tacking. Gybing is so much easier. Now, I've got it's absolutely not a standard type of jibe, but when I jibe in light winds, I go head first under the sail. I twist my body so that I'm facing aft. That allows me to continue to hold onto the tiller with one hand and the main sheet with the other. And then when I twist my way back up onto my butt on the other side, I have the main sheet still in my aft hand now, but it's running under my legs. If I needed to do a little bit of a sheet in or control, I got it. And I've got the tiller in my other hand and my forward hand, and it's just a little bit of a hand swap. If it's heavy winds, that is above 12 knots or so, you want to be very careful about doing a jibe, particularly if you're a beginner, because as you go through the broad reach point of sail toward making that jibe, the boat might want to go fly, and you may not be ready for it to go fly. So I would say if it's above about 12 knots, just avoid doing it. Opt to go for the tack and then the Heisman stiff arm to get back onto the other tack. That's how I handle that. Now, let's talk a little bit about just some sea space management. And if you live and are foiling in a place with wide open water, no currents whatsoever, feel free to just skip this point and just go straight to the end of the video to watch a little bit of foiling zen. But if you've got a shoreline or if you are working in a constrained space, you need to be aware of your sea space. When you're first starting off, you want about 300 to 500 yards of running room that is perpendicular to the wind. Now, keep in mind that the sweet spot for foiling is going to be a beam to just aft of a beam to get up and foiling on the UFO. Therefore, you are in general, when you're foiling, going to be moving downwind. So when you're not foiling, just be cognizant of that and try to start airing toward upwind whenever you're getting resituated, getting your feet back in the straps, and then when you see a puff of wind coming and you're ready to go flying, bear away and try to do your flights. Getting around with the main foil up is not a problem at all. I will say that it tracks just fine upwind with the main foil up. You are going to want to shift your weight a little bit further forward to keep the bows in the water. That helps with the tracking. Going downwind, if you have to go downwind, I would advise in putting the main foil down. Because if you have to head up for any reason, if you have the main foil up, it's going to turn more into a skid. And it does not track that well in the turns. When I'm recovering, I've got to sail up into kind of a dead-end creek to get to the dinghy ramp. If it's a downwind approach to get there, I just leave my main foil down because I'm going to need it to make the turn to head back upwind and stop the boat at the dock so I can grab it and then proceed with getting off the boat. Also, if you have to launch or do any sort of maneuvering with the main foil up, that's fine. Consider putting some sort of bungee or some holdback around the shrouds. Just leave the shrouds go full slack and put some bungee that goes around the mast and the shrouds so that the rig can fully swivel around without those shrouds catching on the retracted main foil. When I first started off, there were a couple of really ugly situations where the shroud had wedged onto the retracted main foil, which was up. And the only way to release the pressure on that is to head up, but immediately upwind of me was shallow water. So I was kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place of bearing away to keep clear of the shallow water, which in turn put an immense amount of pressure on that shroud and the main foil. And I was very fortunate not to break anything. I've experimented with a couple of fittings, 3D pieces that I've printed that snap onto the mast right there that have helped just kind of to help it keep clear of that retracted main foil so the rig can fully pivot around while you're maneuvering. Again, you don't foil that way. Just once you get out into clear water, let everything go, drop the main foil, tighten up the shrouds, get everything tuned up and ready to go. Do not run aground. It is ugly. It is not like running aground in other dinghies where you just pull up the centerboard, pump your way off shallow water. This thing, it's either gonna really anchor you in or you're gonna break stuff. I've bent that control rod for the rudder foil, and it was a pretty mild run aground. It was very soft. I wasn't moving that quickly. And so I was surprised at that grounding that I looked down and I see that control rod had been torqued. So just don't do it. And the other thing about running aground that a lot of people forget, particularly it seems that when I loan my boat out and I'm watching other people sail my boat, is they get really close to shallow water And they're not in danger of running aground, but they are in danger of capsizing and then driving the top of the mast into the ground. Keep in mind, whenever you get close to land, you're probably gonna have to tack or jibe to get away from the land. And when you're tacking or jibing, there always is a risk that you're gonna capsize, especially if you're a beginner. So just don't do it. The way I preach it to people I loan my boat to is, if you're having the ride of your life, if you're up on foils and you're screaming toward a shoreline, have at it, drive that thing all the way into the swamp if you want, and we'll sort it out later, because I want you to foil. But if you're not foiling, if you're just, trying to make some space before you can tack and jibe and then try foiling in the other direction, don't push it. Stay away from shallow water. It's just ugly. Just don't go there. Now, riding this boat, there's nothing really fancy about it. There are videos that already describe how to go about doing that, so no need to cover that here. But there are some nuances that ought to be covered that I really haven't seen anywhere else. And the first thing is, when you are capsizing, do let go of the tiller. There's nothing that can be gained by holding onto the tiller. That is, it's not going to keep the capsize from happening, and it's not going to keep you on the boat. The only thing that it's going to do is add to the wear and tear of the boat, or it's going to break something on the boat. So let go of the tiller. The next thing is, try not to let go of the main sheet. If you do, it's not a deal breaker. The boat might get away from you and you have a little bit of swim in front of you to catch back up to your boat. But if you can, hold on to the main sheet. That's like your umbilical to the boat. As soon as it's done capsizing, you can pull yourself back over and start the riding action. If you are capsizing and you find yourself in between the two hulls, do everything you can to not put any leverage on either the sprit or the wand. This sprit is not at all designed for any sort of lateral loads. And if you instinctively just reach up and grab that for support during a capsize, you're gonna break something. So just avoid that. If you do find yourself in between the two hulls during a capsize or pitch pole, find one of the holes and grab onto those. Just do a bear hug if you need to. Wait for the capsize to finish and then situate yourself so that you can start riding the boat. Stay away from the foils. Both the main foil and the rudder foil, they're sharp and they will hurt you. So if during a capsize you find yourself on the underside of the boat, stay away from the boat, let the foils present themselves above the water first before you then start pulling yourself into the boat to start riding it. Last thing, and this is a small thing, is it's instinctive to grab onto the hiking straps to hoist yourself onto the platform. If you do that, over time, you're gonna start wearing away at a faster rate the fibers that make up those hiking straps. So when you are pulling yourself back aboard to the maximum extent you can, use those handhold indentations in the hull to get yourself as far up onto the platform as possible before using the foot straps at all. If you can avoid using them at all, that would be optimum, but generally, even I have to put a little bit of weight on them. They're gonna wear out a lot faster the more times you do that, so I would just advise, try to keep your hands off them for as long as possible. That's it for today. I hope this was useful. I hope to see you guys out on the water. I hope you have as much fun as I'm having on this boat. If there's anything I can do to help out, please reach out to me. Here it is, a little bit of foiling zen to end off this video. Have a great day, guys.